The world just got a lot more dangerous. US President Joe Biden is on the brink of war with Iran. That's the Islamist tyranny backed by Russia and China, that axis of tyrants. Biden is today planning exactly how to hit back against Iran or the terrorist group that Iran supplies after a drone attack on a US base in Jordan on Saturday, which killed 3 servicemen. Biden's Defence Secretary said overnight a response is coming.
Outrage and sorrow for the death of 3 brave U.S. troops in Jordan and for the other troops who were wounded. The President and I will not tolerate attack on U.S. forces, and we will take all necessary actions to defend the U.S. and our troops.
Now, the US response is likely to be an attack on Iran's terrorist proxies, which include now the Houthi rebels of Yemen, Iraqi militias, and Hamas in Gaza. Its tentacles are everywhere. Or would the US really dare attack Iran itself? Now, former President Donald Trump says this could be World War III, thanks to Biden's weakness and surrender. And yes, indeed, the United States under Joe Biden has projected weakness. It's fled Afghanistan, letting it fall to the Taliban. It's tried to bribe Iran to be nice, to release American hostages by releasing billions of dollars frozen by sanctions to stop Iran developing a nuclear bomb. And joining me is Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's first White House spokesman when he was president. Sean Spicer, thank you so much for joining us. Is Donald Trump right? Is Iran off the leash because Joe Biden is weak? Is that why Iran's now killing US soldiers in Jordan, as well as helping Islamist groups attack Israel and attack ships in the Red Sea?
You know, Andrew, I think that there's so much that people look at with respect to our failed withdrawal from Afghanistan as a critical moment where the U.S. and this particular administration was judged, saying if we can't do that right, if we didn't handle that in the way that we handled that spoke volumes to how we saw additional threats and our policy and our posture going forward. So much of what's happened, a lot of academics here, a lot of lawmakers have used that as the jumping off point and saying because that was such a failure, that other countries, other enemies and adversaries looked at that as an opportunity to say, if they're that feckless in that manner, what else won't they do? And you can see the idea that the Houthis, obviously backed by Iran, are willing to take these provocative measures, literally put a drone over U.S. interest and fire at us, wondering whether or not we would retaliate. I mean, to your point, there's a lot of rumors going on now here in the United States about when we will and what we will be doing. But the idea that was in question is a problem.
It sure is. Look, there's another sign of weakness, Sean Spicer. I mean, Joe Biden has obviously been hopelessly weak at stopping illegal immigrants. More than 2 million have crossed the Mexican border in just 1 year. I mean, the numbers are just staggering, including even young Chinese men of military age. A boatload of illegals even landed in California last week. But now a plot twist. Joe Biden says he will now lock down the border if the Republicans in Congress help him. Can you explain Joe Biden suddenly talking like a Donald Trump?
Yeah, well, there's 2 things, Andrew. Number one, I had Chad Wolf on my podcast today, and so folks in the around the globe, Australia, otherwise, can download it and listen to it. Chad was the acting Secretary of Homeland Security at the end of the Trump administration, and I asked him point blank, could President Biden be doing more at the border right now, unilaterally without Congress? And he listed off several things, including filing asylum in third-party countries, remain in Mexico, and the list went on. Point being is that Joe Biden today could be doing a multitude of things to help protect the country. I have posited for a long time, Andrew, that this is not a sign of weakness. This is actually their plan. They want to allow people to come in. They have said since day one, our border is open. Everybody is welcome. This is to them trying to cater as in an election year to pretend to suburban women and places around the country that that's not really, that they're going to pretend that they're actually doing something. But the reality is this is the Democrats' plan. They are bringing in people. They want them as future voters. There's no question that that's what they're doing. And so him posturing this weekend and saying, if you pass legislation that he knows won't pass, right? So when you know something's not going to happen, it makes it a lot easier to act tough. And he's saying, I'd shut down the border on day one. Well, number one, he knows the legislation's not going to pass. Number two, he knows that he has the ability to do it right now. And number three, as I pointed out, he doesn't want to do it. He just wants to be able to cater to that part of his party that actually does care. But let's remember, a good chunk, probably a majority of the Democratic Party right now doesn't want a closed and secure border. They want people coming in. And so he's trying to have it both ways with his party right now. To those people who are worried, he wants to pretend that he's being tough. But to those people who really want an open and porous border, he's letting them know, don't worry, I'm not changing the policy, because they all know that Congress isn't going to pass this thing because it's not a border security bill. It's an immigration bill.
Yes, it's got all sorts of other little aspects tied to it about, whether you send people back, permanent residence, all that kind of stuff that's debatable. If you want to do something about the border, do something about the border. But Sean, I know Americans, like most voters in democracies, you're looking first at how I'm doing financially, economically, can I get ahead? Those are the things really that tend to determine most elections. But to American voters, the idea that America is weak abroad, weak in defending its borders, I don't know. How do you think this is going to play out in this election year?
It's funny. Just before you and I started, I was texting with a friend of mine on this very issue. And it couldn't be an election that is more clear in terms of the contrast. It's not going to be a hypothetical contest of, what I will promise you this and I will do this. I think Trump's going to lay out, here's what I did in 4 years. I kept the border secure. We were energy independent. Interest rates were lower. Inflation was lower. Our situation abroad was much more secure. And contrast that to every one of those issues where Joe Biden's administration has been, and saying, which 4 years do you want? And I know the Biden administration, when you hear them talk, they want to talk about these abstract ideas, democracy being under attack, which is nonsense, because they can't campaign on their record. They know that the border is insecure and that more and more independent voters in these key battleground states are concerned for their safety. And you put your finger on this, Andrew. For American voters, I've always posited that there are two things. The gut feeling that you have about your personal economic security. So how's the economy make you feel? It's not a government statistic. It's, do I feel confident in my job and my savings, et cetera? And then your personal security. Do I feel safe? Are cities under attack? Crime is running rampant. The border is open. Fentanyl's flowing into all sorts of communities. And the border situation isn't just about Texas and Arizona and California. Every community is now becoming a border community. And you saw the exit polls in New Hampshire, up there in New England. The number one issue coming out for voters was immigration. And so I think that, to your question, this election is going to be a sharp contrast between 4 years of Donald Trump's policies and the 4 years of Joe Biden's policies, plain and simple.
That is such a very decisive way of looking at it. Absolutely. My 4 years against your 4 years, people choose. I think that's going to be a devastating contrast.
And it's just, and that's it. That's it. That's simple though, right?
Sean Spicer, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Andrew.